What's up, people? This is going to be a quick video because Boxing Librarian talked and ranted for hours and he only had 2 points. So we're going to now just hit him in the mental head very easily. This guy is so easy to mess up. And he goes in on the LDBC. Apparently he has a problem with the LDBC because they're black people. Apparently he must have a problem with black people or something. Even though he praises black fighters. The irony. Anyway, let's go into it. Because this guy is funny as fuck. One, he's talking about how the PBC doesn't have the power to validate the WBO. The PBC expressed why they don't want to. Yes, Jackson the Hopeful. We're going to talk about that in another video. But I want to address Boxing Librarian about the PBC rejecting the WBO as a sanctioning body and their championship belts as championship belts. Now, as we all know, the International Boxing Hall of Fame recognizes the WBO as one of 4 belts necessary to be undisputed champion in a division. However, the PBC, giving reasons, have expressed that they are no longer recognizing the WBO as a belt, as a championship belt for their champions. And the reasons they gave was because the WBO seems to be biased towards selection of contenders and people to get their belts who are either of top rank or of, not matchroom, help me out here. The promoter. Guys, help me out with the promoter's name. Frank Warren. And they said that they've had several contenders who were supposed to have gotten their shots at the WBO belt who have been bypassed. As such, they withdraw themselves from recognizing the WBO as a sanctioning body, and they will be doing business with the WBA, IBF, and WBC. Now, apparently, Boxing Librarian thinks this is terrible and that the PBC doesn't have the power to do this. One, the PBC has the power to do whatever the hell they want to do. They are a corporate body of boxers. Therefore, if they don't want to recognize the belt, they don't have to. It doesn't matter that the International Boxing Hall of Fame recognizes the belt. The PBC, which is a body of boxers, doesn't. And that's that. They're their own organization. And there's nothing Boxing Librarian can do about it. Now, Boxing Librarian seems to be thinking that the PBC is a monopoly, and that's a very negative thing, and what they're doing is a very bad thing. The strange thing about it is Boxing Librarian is the guy who's been speaking about the fact that there are too many belts in boxing and too many sanctioning bodies. So he actually contradicts himself by now turning around and being angered that the PBC is actually shrinking for a champion to get. So he contradicts himself right there. He talks about the old-time greats, they had fewer belts and blah, blah, blah. What do you think the PBC is doing? It's actually restricting fewer belts. His other point is that he believes that the PBC not recognizing the WBO belt means that Errol Spence will not face Terence Crawford, which is far from the truth. All it means is that the PBC will not recognize Terence Crawford as a WBO world champion. It doesn't mean that Errol Spence won't face him. See, Floyd Mayweather faced Sugar Shane Mosley when Sugar Shane Mosley was the WBA champion, but they didn't fight for the WBA belt. They fought each other because Shane Mosley had beaten Antonio Margarito and was the number 1 welterweight in the world at the time. That's why they fought. Belts don't make people. And so if Terence Crawford is that outstanding fighter that shows himself to be at the top tier, Errol Spence will face him if Errol Spence gets past Sean Porter and Manny Pacquiao, who he will have to beat first to face Terence Crawford. The thing about it is, Terrence Crawford is not going to be facing anybody on that caliber. So what I would really want to know is what Terrence Crawford is going to be doing. Jackson the Hopeful. Dillian White is facing for. Truth in his word. What's up, my brother? What's up, my brother? Boxing Librarian again goes on a rant, and as usual, he's talking a load of rubbish. So I'm just correcting him. So first point. The PBC cannot invalidate the WBO. They can do whatever the hell they want to do because they're their own body. Doesn't mean that the WBO is not going to be recognized by the International Boxing Hall of Fame. It's one of the organizations that is determined for the undisputed championship of the world. But if the PBC wants to do what they want to do, they can do whatever they want to do. Period. There's nothing that any of us can do about it. And that's that. Now he's gone in on the LDBC, and he's trying to paint with a broad brush everybody in the WBC being, just blind followers of the PBC and Al Heyman, and he seems to have an issue with Al Heyman for reasons unknown to me, because all Al Heyman has been doing in boxing has been helping us to see fights on network television, the best fights, and some of them have been free. So I don't know how Al Heyman all of a sudden is this villain. And then he goes on to say how, just like how they're saying that TR, Top Rank, and not so much Matchroom, but Top Rank especially, he's saying that these guys, they're only putting on fights in-house. And he was saying that they're not always putting out fights in-house. And he's saying that these people are blind to what PBC is doing, where they're putting on fights in-house. And they're not really dealing with people outside of the PBC. Well, if that's the case, then Andy Ruiz wouldn't face Anthony Joshua, Boxing Librarian. You have a short memory. A very short memory. He's a PBC fighter, and he has to rematch Anthony Joshua, who's a Matchroom fighter. So obviously, my friend, you don't know what you're talking about. You're funny. You give jokes, Boxing Librarian. And for now, I'm going to make a video on what you said, just because Tommy Temper put it inside of the the hangout. Like I said, you're funny, but it's easy to challenge you in arguments because you don't think things through. You're emotional. You're attached. You have nostalgia. You're attached to things. You do textbook stuff. You talk facts and figures, but you talk things that everybody else talks about. You don't critically think anything. You have no critical thinking skills. And so it's easy to expose you and to make you look like an idiot. Okay? You go on a rant, emotional rant about the LDBC. What have they done to you? What have they ever done to you? So, Mr. Boxing Librarian, I would suggest to you that you tone it down, and before you put out a video and go with that weird laugh that you have, that you would at least think through critically what you're about to say, so that you don't contradict yourself, because you sound like an idiot every single time. I get so much humor out of you. I'm always laughing. I'm like, this dude, he come with facts and figures, and he just never knows how to put them together. You've got to put it together so it can work. So, let's continue with the Boxing Librarian, because he's a funny guy. He gives you information. That's what I love about him. He is a librarian. I give you that. He gives you information. He just don't know how to put the information together. His deductive reasoning is faulty. His logic is logic. It just don't flow on the proper premise. All right, let's get it popping. The other thing that he said, which to me is just less, is that Terrence Crawford, who's a very good fighter, should not be ignored. The problem with this is this, Boxing Librarian. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Who has Terrence Crawford fought and beat at welterweight that's in the top 10 welterweights of the division? Who? See, it's all about who you fight and who you beat. So Terrence Crawford, like Gennady Golovkin, looks great at welterweight. He looks sensational. And everybody's saying there's no question mark on Terrence Crawford. Well, there's none at there's no question mark on him in his career. He proved himself. But when you're talking about welterweight, there are question marks. If you're being completely honest with yourself, he ain't fought nobody yet. We can't call Amir Khan somebody. He got a name. But, you can't call him. He's not even a top 10 welterweight right now. Errol Spence is fighting somebody's. He fought Kell Brook, and he's fighting Sean Porter. And we don't know if he will win against Sean Porter. Everybody's talking like if Errol Spence is going to win against Sean Porter. That's like me saying, Keith Thurman's going to beat Manny Pacquiao. That didn't happen. So I really don't know what's going to happen when Sean Porter faces Errol Spence. We are assuming he's going to pass Sean Porter. We don't know. And even if he does, he's got Manny Pacquiao next to face. You see, Boxing Librarian, the PBC has a lot of fighters in it. So obviously they're going to mix and match those fighters with each other. Just as Top Rank does, but just that Top Rank don't have as many fighters as the PBC does. These fighters want to fight each other. But some fighters, like say for instance Jamal Charlo, will have to face guys in Matchroom. He's going to have to do it. Now Al Heyman can't make him do it. He has to express his desire to do so. Like Gervonta Davis has expressed his desire to face Tevin Farmer, who unfortunately for him, his contract with Matchroom ends very soon. So maybe Tevin Farmer goes across to the PBC, or he renews his contract with Matchroom. I suggest he renews his contract with Matchroom so he has some leverage. That's truly my advice. Just like Tyson Fury has done his thing with Top Rank, so he has leverage with Deontay Wilder, who, by the way, is going to face Tyson Fury. And guess what? Deontay Wilder is also a PBC fighter. See, Al Heyman, my friend, for your information, is not a promoter. We keep on saying that over and over. He's a great organizer and facilitator, but he's not a promoter. He tries to manage his fighters. Let his fighters do what they want to do. So Deontay Wilder expressed his desire to face Tyson Fury again, so he's going to have it. Floyd Mayweather expressed his desire to face Manny Pacquiao. Al Heyman made it happen. As a manager, not a promoter. If he was a promoter, he'd have to get a license as a promoter, which means Floyd's Mayweather Promotional Company, which was being co-promoted by Golden Boy, which had the license at the time, but Mayweather's company finally got their own license. But Mayweather Promotions was the one that promoted the event with Manny Pacquiao, who was with Top Rank. So you must know your facts, my friend. Everybody's talking about Al Heyman is the guy pulling the strings on everything. Not really. If he was pulling the strings, Adrian Broner would never have faced Marcos Maidana, my friend. No, it's based on Danny Jacobs would never face Gennady Golovkin. It's what the fighter wants. Al Heyman tries to make happen as a manager. He just so happens to manage a lot of fighters. Lara wanted certain fights. He got them because of Al Heyman, who is a manager. PBC comes about because Al Heyman is a manager. He can manage events. He can manage fighters. He does not promote events. He does not promote fighters. He lets that be done by the promotional companies, which he's very smart and cleverly did. That's why he's not sued. He's a clever guy. He outsmarted you. He outsmarted Bob Arum. He outsmarted everyone. And you don't like that. He's a smart black man. As Floyd Mayweather, who's his protege. So, my friend, that is why you cannot say what you're saying about Al Heyman, no matter what you try. And Al Heyman has proven time and time again he's willing to work with anyone. because he doesn't have the say on who he wants to work with. It's the fighter who has the say. Yes, boxing librarian. That's point number 3. And point number 4. And I will be finished with this video, which will only take maybe 20 minutes while you took an hour ranting and raving. The final point is one that is very poignant. So poignant that you haven't really thought it through. The WBO as an organization is the youngest of the 3 boxing bodies. Like the IBF, it came from the WBA. There was a dispute between the WBA and the WBO, or the people of the WBO, and they fractionated off of the WBA. In other words, they're unnecessary as a body. They're just the WBA with their own idea of what they should do. The original 2 boxing bodies were the WBC and WBA. Now, the IBF has a certain principle to it. They ensure that you face their mandatories. They ensure that you have certain weight restrictions. The IBF has its purpose. And in fact, if you were to think of it, they're probably the boxing body that's less fucked up. The WBC is fucked up. The WBA is fucked up. The IBF is less fucked up than them. Again, this is opinion. Now we'll need to bring the facts, right? The facts. The WBA actually enforces their mandatories, more or less. So if you have a mandatory to face, they will push it unless you have a unification to face. WBC and WBA are loose when it comes to their mandatories, generally speaking, I think. That is just my opinion. They may have their rules which help to navigate that. The IBF has the same day weigh-in. The morning of the fight, you must not weigh more than 10 pounds. That's great. Again, the IBF does that. Of course, that rule has been changed somewhat because of Danny Jacobs. But nonetheless, that is a rule by the IBF. It was challenged, and so I think it's been amended. So the IBF has its purpose. It actually, in some respects, is better than the WBC and WBA in some respects. But the original 2 boxing bodies are the WBC and WBA. But you should know this, boxing librarian. You are a historian. You're supposed to know this stuff. And you know that the WBO is the latest addition. It was recognized, but really and truly, the WBO is the youngest of them. Just like how they try to push the IBO into a boxing sanctioning body that's world recognized right now. What the PBC is trying to do is turn it back and move away from the WBO, which seems very partisan and promoting Eastern European fighters, which is your neck of the woods, and trying to basically facilitate them so that they be occupied in the sport of boxing. You seem to have a problem with that. I understand. What I would say is this. The PBC, which is a organization and a set of boxing people, what the WBO can do is challenge it in the court of law, or the PBC can also decide that if they're not going to have the WBO as a sanctioning body with their fighters, they will need to, in my case, look at the legal foundation for that. Okay? Now, having said all of that, I will say that that history that I just spoke about is why I think a lot of people in boxing talk about the WBO, and it doesn't really have the prestige, and people don't really care about it. One of the great examples of that was the fact that Floyd didn't even pay the sanctioning fees for the WBO. He didn't really care about the belt. So it may be that possibly that sort of sentiment runs through Al Heyman, promoters of the PBC, and they're like, why the fuck are we even dealing with this belt? Get this belt out of the way. So that they are returning back to the original 3. And the IBF has its purpose, It actually, is more stringent in certain areas. The WBO seems to be a waste of time belt. We have all thought that. I think a lot of people like Boxing Beats and Rise, etc., EJ Boxing Live, they think it's a waste of time to have it as a belt. And we have too many belts anyway. If we can get back to the WBC and WBA, that would be great. The problem with that is the WBC and WBA seem to have these sort of convoluted things, and they're not straightforward. I think the IBF is actually better than them in many respects. However, the prestige and the long-standing history, just like the Ring magazine, goes to the WBC and WBA, formerly known as the NYSAC and the NBA, which was what would determine an undisputed champion. Sugar Ray Robinson, all these guys. Sugar Ray Robinson actually had a variation of, I think it's the WBA, when he won a certain championship fight later on in his career. I can't remember if it was Basilio or whoever. So anyway, at the end of the day, that is what we're talking about. Those are the points. And when you look at those points, they really refute anything you just had to say. So if I were you, Boxing Librarian, I'd get off my emotional ass and I would start to critically think with logic. You guys have a great one. You guys have anything else to say? Please do. 90% of WBO champions are promoted by Bob Arum, truth in his word. Or by, like Frank Warren, they are Eastern European fighters, more or less, yes. And PBC is not going to tolerate that bullshit, and that's just what it is. But Boxing Librarian seemed to be highly offended by that, and he's carrying on a rant, which is humorous to watch. Tommy Temper had me watch this thing. Tommy Temper, you're an instigator. I thought you were a guy that brings people together. I'm just playing. As you can see, Boxing Librarian will have to come back with points if he can. He won't be able to, but he will try. He may do ad hominem, and he may recall, hey, you had this thing with Crab and Tunney, and he's going to talk all kinds of shit, but he's not going to address the issue. Peace. I'm out.